Hello everyone and welcome to what would have been a weekend special if I wasn't actually so lazy, but welcome to the Crown of the Old Iron King DLC for Dāku Souru Tsu. As you can see, to unlock this DLC, of course you need to have bought it, and then you will find the location, the area location to teleport to the DLC just behind the primal bonfire of the Old Iron King boss area. So let's see some disclaimers before we actually begin. I recorded this on a weekend. If I can check the date, it was the weekend of the 18th of October. So technically I'd planned this as a weekend special for you guys. I thought to myself, I'm gonna record the game and then do some live commentary so that we can just laugh and joke together. You can hear my first impressions of the game, and then I'll upload them on Sunday and Monday so that you can have this what happened during the weekend. As you can see now, we're in the DLC, so please pay close attention to the surroundings and the art style. We will talk about just the vistas later on as we continue. But anyway, I recorded this on the weekend, and just as I started recording, I was doing some live commentary, and then I just had this headache and I was really tired, and I really wanted to record this, but then the headache was really killing me, so I decided against live commentary. Then I thought to myself, let me just record the entirety of the DLC, and then I'll split it up into somewhat 30-minute segments, because in total I think I spent 2 hours doing the DLC. It took longer than the first DLC, but not as long as I thought I would need. And then I will do live commentary during the week and release it during the week in small segments, probably 4 or 5 segments. And that's what I'm doing right now. This is live commentary. I'm sorry if you wanted, this is post commentary. I'm sorry if you wanted some live commentary, but that won't be the case. So right now, as it is, what I'm just doing is I've got a software to record my voice, and I'm just watching the videos as they come, so I won't have time to pause and read item descriptions. If you want to pause and read the item descriptions yourselves during the play of the video, please knock yourself out. It won't really matter to me. As we can see there, we found our first Ashen Idol. We will encounter more of these throughout the playthrough. This Nadalia will be a character within this playthrough that we'll never meet, but will play an important part in the steps of progress. And Nadalia is now this Ashen Idol. You'll find many of her idols. She was the ruler of this Broom Tower. Broom Tower being the place we are in right now. I would assume that Broom Tower was either a subsection of the Old Iron King's kingdom, or it was a small land that existed by the will of the Old Iron King. I believe the Old Iron King either had existed during this particular time or was the one in power. So it's a real interesting twist on the story, being introduced to this new princess who seemed to have had a kingdom, and it was hers, but then it fell to such ruin. I don't know why, and she had to renounce her own flesh to make these Ashen Idols out of despair. We'll find more about this later, but I guess I should mix about the commentary between what I'm just talking about and what's actually happening. Over there, I'd seen the treasure right next to the throne room bonfire, and I thought to myself, maybe I can get it now, but that's not the case. We're gonna have to unlock the elevators and power up this area. And here we encounter our first Ashen Idol of Nadalia. As you can see, it's a very dangerous place, but we do get smelter wedges. Smelter wedges are what we'll need to drive through into her chest to deactivate or disarm the Ashen Idols, and hence yielding a fragment of Nadalia's soul, the Bride of Ash. As I think I was gonna go check out the description here, and let's see what it has to say in short brief reading. I was struggling to find it because I've got so many. Soul of Nadalia, Bride of Ash, who renounced her flesh and wandered the Broom Tower. When Nadalia came to this land, the king she sought was no longer there. Dispirited, she forsook her own soul. Oh, okay, I understood now. She came here looking for the Old Iron King. and she did not find him. So during this despair, she was like, I've come so far, I've forsaken my kingdom to search for this king of light, this king who was supposed to give me hope in whatever quest she might have had. Then she came and she found this kingdom in ruin. The old Iron King did not exist anymore. And then she was dispirited, and she was this princess, and she had forsaken her own kingdom, and she came to this place, this Broom Tower. And that was that. She became dispirited and renounced her own flesh. And how she renounced or denounced her own flesh, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll find that out later. But that was it. She decided to let go of all things. She had lost all hope. In a sense, you could say she went hollow, because that's a key component of hollowing, is that when an undead loses all hope, they really decide that they have nothing to live for, and then they hollow and lose their minds. So you could argue that Nadalia came here, and from the events that became of her, she turned hollow. But her hollowing was not similar to most undead. Most undead just become these lifeless beings that seek souls in others that have souls, because they themselves are soul starved. So they just become like soul-eating zombies in a sense. So they have this instinctive urge to hunt down all those things that are still living, all those things that still have souls and humanity within them, to suck them dry. But in her case, it seems as if she went hollow and assumed this new state of being, this ashen idol. She became an ashen idol, which in turn placed itself in multiple places so as to exist for some purpose. What her purpose is, I don't know. If you were to look at what the ashen idols themselves are doing, you can see that they are... I have to admit that the view is actually quite amazing of this kingdom. I don't know why I didn't stay a bit longer. I thought that would be enough time. No? Where did I go? Okay, I went around the edge. You could see that the practice of the ashen idols in this particular kingdom we'll encounter more later. There are 12 in total, so that was our first one. Soul of Nadalia, a fragment of her soul. You can see that they either try attack you to repel you from this land, to push you away, to kill you, to stop trespassing. That's one thing that the souls seem to do. And another thing the souls seem to do is heal all other units within the area, for example, or other enemies that you, the trespasser, is facing. So you could see that, well, you could imply that in a last ditch effort, after she lost hope to find her king, this old Iron King that she was seeking for. Black, we've got a new balm now that will increase magic damage, but this isn't a magic build, so I just quickly browsed over it. And a lot of prism stones. I don't know why. I guess they wanted us to test different heights to see what was damaging and not damaging, but sadly I didn't put this to great use. Maybe in a future playthrough of this DLC or these DLCs with my X build, maybe I will find out what was the point of the prism stones if I do return to this land. But there's another ashen idol, and it too will have a fragment of a soul. But anyways, you can see it fortifies. It has multiple uses. It either fortifies the enemies, it either heals the enemies, or it repels you back with spells of pyromancy. So her hollowing was not of a typical undead which decided to just like, for example, turn hollow and seek out those who have souls and steal their souls and humanity. It wasn't the case with her. Instead, with her, she decided to fragment her own soul and then place these fragments within different key points within this empire she sought to protect, and leave these fragments doing exactly that, protecting this kingdom. But she did not decide to just, how can I say this? She didn't decide to just leave her ashen idols behind to protect this land without a failsafe. So you could argue that she did see that this land will fall to undeath or to a curse because all these units who are fighting, all these soldiers, were once either undead or human being. Right now they've turned hollow, hence why they're just here in this place, just guarding it with no actual meaning or purpose. You can even tell by their skin they've rotted. Typical case of hollowing. And so instead she left these smelter wedges. Well, it's an assumption that she left the smelter wedges. Another assumption could be that someone found out that her ashen idols could be disarmed by the use of these smelter wedges, and decided to scatter them throughout the land for anyone else who would walk the same path that this person has to disarm these ashen idols if need be, if they themselves become unstable. So maybe someone thought to themselves, if these idols become unstable, I can leave a failsafe behind to disable them. Or the princess thought that, you could argue also that the princess thought that I sought the king, and the king is not here. I've lost all hope. But if by some chance that the king may return, then I shall leave these defenses in place to protect his kingdom. But I will also leave the keys to disarm this failsafe so as to not harm the king himself when he returns. He himself can disarm these if he truly is the king. And then she renounced her body, she held on to the crown and died. But I don't know. That's my take so far on the story of Nadalia and why this place is as what it is. Besides that, there's a lot more to talk about with other bosses and other NPCs, but we'll talk about those as they come along. There's no point in training out all the lore now and then just talking about random events later on. Nadalia is the central focus of this DLC. I totally believe that. And all the other powerful entities that exist within the DLC really are a reflection of her importance. That's why you are carrying her fragments. But one thing you have to understand about her fragments, and for example, other souls that exist within the game. If you look at a typical soul of the undead, or in any undead soul that you pick up, whether it be a great warrior or a forgotten soul, they are all white. They are pure white souls that vary in size depending on the strength of the being that dropped the soul. Such was always the case in Dark Souls and even in Demon Souls. The point being that I believe that it is possible to identify the soul of a specific being by its color and size. And the reason why I say that is because, for example, we just said any undead soul, any ordinary undead, for example, like the chosen undead, like I don't know, the firekeepers. No, not the firekeepers, that would be a special case. Like for example, Lothric, Zegmaya, or any other undead that existed within Dark Souls, for example. Those are what I would call ordinary undead, just ordinary people who got this curse and turned undead. And their souls are pure white and vary in color, like I said, depending on the power of their soul. But then if you look at a soul of a lesser being or a lesser god, for example, like the Dragon Rider. The Dragon Rider isn't really considered a great being, but he is definitely not an ordinary undead. Hence why someone like him would have a soul that is slender, a tall, slender soul that is bright yellow with a little bit of white in the center, right? And then when you look at a lord soul, a soul of a somewhat god, like Gwyn or the Rotten or something, their souls are huge, not oval shaped, but something similar to an oval shape. They are very big and they're very bright yellow, moving on to orange. But then now if you look at the soul of someone born from dark, or someone that has imbued themselves with dark, for example the soul of Manus or the soul of Nasandra, Their souls, these are greater beings of the dark, and their souls are big, oval shaped, like the Lord souls of Gwyn and the Witch of Isolate, for example. They're really big and oval, but then they are purple moving into black with a sense of white in them. So each soul has a sense of white within them, but then the lesser being you become, the greater the white within the soul. My point being is that not Nasandra's souls, but Nadalia's souls, all her fragments are slender and dark purple and tall, turning to black. So you could use this to think that Nadalia was born from the dark, or at least if not born from the dark, she did have some dark residing within her soul. Her soul was not a fragment or a piece given off by Gwyn so many years and eons ago. Her soul didn't come from her. Her soul came from the pygmy. Her soul came from the dark. So in that case, what is Nadalia's link with Manus? Because Manus was the father of all dark. Some people say Manus was the furtive pygmy. I would think so too, somewhat. And after he was defeated in the abyss, of course, by the chosen undead, dark spread again. So my question is, this princess, this kingdom, this broom tower, what relations does it have with the dark? At this current moment, I still don't know. But I'm not too sure. I would believe that Nadalia has some link with the dark. But if she does have a link with the dark, why was she seeking out the old Iron King? This is when you can actually start drawing parallels within the stories. Like I said, I believe that Dark Souls 2, well, for me, the lore is such that the time zones are split up. This Drang Lake is a place where many kingdoms have risen and fallen, right? With different names. But then also, I also believe that this entire area of Drang Lake and all its different parts were places within Lordran. So Lordran being the foundation, this is the future of Lordran. I believe that. But I also believe that it can be summarized in a linear path in the sense that this is the future, but I also believe that it's a parallel universe towards Lordran. So for example, how can I explain this? Let's take the relationship of Gwyn and Gwyndolin, for example. Gwyndolin was Gwyn's son, who had an affinity for the moon. And this made him quite feminine in the eyes of his father and the kingdom. So Gwyn was ashamed of this. And so he instead decided to dress him up like a girl and raised him as a girl. So Gwyndolin always had this affinity for Gwyn. I was like, he had this desire to be seen by his father. He wanted his father to notice him for his greatness, that I am your heir, give me some respect, you know. But Gwyn never did this. Instead, Gwyn favored his elder son, who in turn was his pride and joy. You could say he was the commander of armies. He was this powerful person. But then he ended up losing the annals, and Gwyn also couldn't tolerate failure within the son that he trusted, the son that he placed his kingdom and said, you are my heir. He couldn't even tolerate failure from him, and instead banished him, and in turn renounced his title and name. So now you can look at this this intricate relationship between Gwyn and Gwyndolin. It's a relationship of one son trying to gain the attention of his father and trying to please his father, to do anything to be noticed by his father, but his father just will not notice him because of what the son has chose to become, this being with the affinity of the moon. He just could not believe that to be a son and someone worthy of his kingdom, it just could not work. So to him, to Gwyndolin was a shame. So let's just look at that particular relationship. And then now we come back to Drang Lake, right? Within the main story, Nasandra was married to the king, right? The king who had fled. And how can I say this in a clear way? When you finally kill her and read her soul, it says that she was born from the dark, right? Small fragments of the dark that spread after the death of Manus gave birth to different parts of her. Some fragments of the dark gave birth to her weapon, for example. Some fragments of the dark gave birth to her catalysts. Some fragments of the dark gave birth to her power, her magics, her sorceries, her spells, and all that stuff. And then some fragments of the dark created her. She understood that she was a fragment of the main source of the dark. She was a fragment of Manus. And in believing this, I believe that Nasandra's goal was to reunite the dark by first of all taking control of the kingdom, and then using this power to understand what the king was first researching, in the sense of controlling the soul, to find the essence of the soul. She wanted to control the king, to find the essence of the soul, so that she could understand the essence of her soul, the essence of her father Manus, and then be noticed by the dark. She wanted to be embraced by the dark, just like how Gwyndolin wanted to be embraced by Gwyn. So if we look at these two separate stories, to me they look like parallels. It may be different people. There are two different people here and two different people there, who may seem to exist in two different timelines, but the relationship that they share to me seems the same. It seems to be a paradox within time, in a sense. And that's why I also believe that the story between Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, even though the locations may be considered the future, I also consider them as an alternate universe of what could have happened if people had different names during different times. That's why I believe that, for example, the old Iron King, the ruler of this land that we're currently in the DLC, the old Iron King to me was this dimensions or this timeline's Gwyn, the King of Sunlight. I believe that's the old Iron King's stance, or his role within this law of Drang Lake was to be the ruler, the King of Sun, to lead all those under him. But then it does say, when you beat the old Iron King twice, it does say that the old Iron King, the actual king, not the boss fight, the actual king, his kingdom sank into this hot lava, this hot magma. And during this time of despair, probably the events of Nadalia coming to search for the old Iron King was during the time when his kingdom was sinking into the heat, seeking into the magma, and the old Iron King had sunk with his portion of the kingdom as well. So she came after this. But then it does say that when he sunk into the lava, he met the being that must not be named. Who is this person? And by the way, that's kind of a play on words, in the sense that the one who shall not be named is a phrase that's actually used in the Harry Potter books to describe Voldemort. But anyway, that's just something I find funny. I don't know if From Software used it in that regard or they were just trolling. I'm not too sure. But anyway, it says the old Iron King met the one who shall not be named, and together they became Icarus Earth. Icarus Earth is the being that you fight when you encounter the new old Iron King, this big monster made of molten lava and rock. That's Icarus Earth. But I believe that Gwyn and the old Iron King met within this light, this lava, this fire. They finally met as two beings. There were two beings within alternate universes. One was Gwyn and one was the old Iron King. They were one and the same, just existing in different times. Just as if, for example, I'm talking to you now, but maybe within a different time, I am actually working in a mine somewhere, as an example. Then one day I die and my alternate self dies. Then our souls would meet in a common place because we are the same being. So I believe that that's the case with Gwyn and the Old Iron King. They both finally died, or at least their souls were no longer relevant within this particular time. And then their souls met up together and formed this entity that became Icarus Earth. Icarus Earth being the main body, the main embodiment of Gwyn's soul, the main embodiment of Gwyn's power. It is the representation of what Gwyn should have been. Or not should have been, but it's the representation of the power that Gwyn had within him. But then only in the case that all fragments of Gwyn were one. Because you have to consider that Gwyn in the beginning fragmented his soul and gave it to everyone. So you have to ask yourself, if Gwyn did not fragment his soul, how powerful do you think that man would have been? You know? Because even after dividing his soul and giving it to so many different people, like for example the 4 kings, and giving it to Sith, and then fragmenting it and giving it to some other renowned people within Lordran, he gave them all his soul. His children had his soul. So his soul had been fragmented as much as the pygmy soul. The pygmy soul was also given to all undead, and all those who followed dark were given the pygmy soul. So when we encountered Gwyn and man as the two representations of light and dark, they were not 100%. They were actually fragments of their former selves. So people may think that, for example, Gwyn is weak because after all the failure he encountered, he ended up just giving up, and well, some people believe that he gave up and sacrificed his soul to the fire to let it burn a bit longer, maybe for the future of his children and his kingdom, or maybe for the future of someone he loved, maybe, I don't know. And some people might say that the serpents talked him into doing it, saying it was a good idea. So some people could think that Gwyn was tricked. But anyway, through these two different solutions, or these two different situations, you would think that Gwyn was weak. He didn't know the correct thing to do, and through his weakness he became hollow. But you have to understand that this was a man who had literally fragmented his soul for the existence of the entire world. So Gwyn was actually a very, very powerful person. That's what I believe. And those are the parallels I'm drawing so far from the soul of Nadalia, Nadalia's role, the Old Iron King, Gwyn and Gwyndolin. These are the things. That's so far what I've learned in this particular section of the DLC. So I guess I could cut this segment short. Let's not make them long. I did promise at least 30-minute videos for each particular episode, and we will continue this discussion later. Thank you for spending your time with me. I will see you guys next time.